Ready, week 8. So hopefully you're used to the schedule that I've laid out as far as when things are complete and when I record. So I'm generally 2 weeks ahead of you. So depending on when you watch this, of course. So this morning, I've worked and gotten week 8 released, but what I graded this morning, and really what I grade every day, hopefully you see this, is that every morning my schedule is I wake up and I grade anything that's submitted. If it's a weekday, if it's a weekend, I actually don't grade on the weekend. I try not to work on the weekend, but sometimes that works to a varying degree. But in general, so the reason I bring this up is that I have just finished grading and looking at your submissions for the first lab test, right? And so I've talked about the importance of that in your grade. And, there were definitely a number of you that didn't do it. And I get that. I get that for whatever reason but just know that that's a big impact on your grade. And the sooner you get caught up, it is late graded. I do accept late work. I think I've talked about this at least every time. Okay, maybe 70% of the time on these videos. So hopefully by now you're getting used to that. But if you're not checking in, maybe you're not. Okay, so we're actually approaching here at week 7, 2 more until the mid part of the semester. So my question for those of you that might be here that are getting back into, for whatever reason, you kind of rotated out and life got your attention. As a matter of fact, I just read one of the replies that this was the case, right? So you have to ask yourself, can I get caught up and stay caught up for the rest of the semester? Because obviously you're in this to succeed, to get this class, which meets a requirement for you complete. So just making sure you're staying on track with that. All right, so now I want to turn to just a topic that is important for me to bring back up. And it kind of relates to what I talked about before. It's now Tuesday morning. I woke up to a couple emails in my inbox about students having various issues around the lab test. And I get it. It's a natural instinct to want to reach out to get help. But you can totally do that. Just know the following. I don't work when you work, possibly, depending on your work schedule, depending on when you get to work on this class. So my typical day starts about 5 in the morning. I have a routine that I do. I sit down and I grade. And that's the other thing hopefully you've gotten used to, is that if you submit something the next day, chances are pretty good that it's going to be graded. Except for the discussions. I actually don't grade those until the morning it's due, because I'd have to go through and figure out what replies are done. So, but know in general that I do grade every day. But when I wake up the morning after something's due and somebody's looking for help, I'm not going to be really helpful for you getting it in on time, okay? Because it was already due. And that's where, it's a choice that you have to do it on the due date. Just know that puts you in a situation where getting help from me may be impossible, which is, by the way, why I instituted for this class Discord, because enough of you ask for me to go ahead and set that up for this class. And I did, but I don't see a lot of activity. So just know, here's what happens. And this is actually a term in technology that is good to understand, and it's called the network effect. So until enough of the population use a system, right, it will have a curve of, population as far as engagement. But once it hits a network effect, which is a certain percentage, right, then it almost goes into exponential mode as far as the way people interact with it. And in this class, this could be true, even though we're not what would maybe be considered the classical definition of network effect. Like network effect has been seen in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I mean, we've seen this, that the more people that are on it at a certain point, it just grows exponentially. So what this means for us is because not a lot of people are on it, I think that's why it's not active. So if you want to get on it, it's not too late. And here's the reason I'm bringing this up is that when I'm not available, and that will typically be like I start in the morning around 5 or 6, I do a routine, I work all day. Around 6 o'clock, I'm done. So when you're emailing me, you're not going to get a response at that time of night. Makes sense? So you can still email me, absolutely, and I'll reply to you the next day, but that doesn't help you get something done on time. So I'm curious, if you're willing to reply, like, do you understand that? And it's like, you have any questions about it? Okay, so let's turn to week 8. So this is I find this to be one of the more enjoyable parts of this discussion or part of this class is understanding this idea of networks, right? And the discussion this week is around internet speed. And the little mini lectures and routing packets, those are good to help you increase your understanding of what these, because we are all having some kind of connected device. And what I really love about this internet speed discussion is it actually asks you to do something that I highly recommend anyone do in their life, and it's to understand the different internet speeds that you have in your life and either how they're related or just how fast are they, right? Sorry. So what I've done, and by the way, let's just look real quick here at the discussion, right? And this has actually got a link to a website that I've used, but I'm going to show you one I actually use more today. So this one you can totally go here, right, and do an internet speed test. And then what it's going to have you do is based on whether you have a home internet or just mobile internet, you could, even though you have a home, you might want to do this assignment looking at your mobile or also a public Wi-Fi, right? So what you want to do is go through, and here's going to be the key in a narrative mode, right? So talk about, write a paragraph. Don't just, say one, answer, right? Like write a narrative. And what that means is write a paragraph where you do some testing here about your internet speed and answer some of these questions, right? Like different times of day, right? What speed was advertised to you, if you know? Was it different? What was the speed morning, late, and afternoon, right? And then again, what was the actual speed compared to the advertising speed? Now that's just for your home. So you can choose which of these you want to, and this will be based on what type of internet you typically use or you want to use just for this assignment. So what I decided to do today for me, because I do this periodically, and this was a good reminder for me to do it. So this is the site that is provided here is a fine site to do internet speed test. I happen to use, I just go to Google and I type internet speed test, okay? And then I run the test. So in addition to running it, I thought I would do some comparison because we are all now learning Excel. And I wanted to just show you one of the ways that I do that. Okay, so first I'm going to so this is the output because for me, based on where okay, so I'm actually in my house, but the way I've set up my house is I have a little kind of a repeater, like my Wi-Fi is in the back part of the house, and I have a little repeater hub here close to me, but I can connect into that wired or I can be wireless, right? So for my workstation that I'm on, I have two options. And then, of course, on my phone, I have similar, right? I can either be in the Wi-Fi in my house or I can be on my internet service providers, right? Not my internet service provider, my mobile provider, which in my case happens to be T-Mobile. I could be on their system. And so how does my Wi-Fi on my house compare to their speeds? And this will vary based on the time of day, the location in my house of all those things, right? How many other people are using it. So it's just good to have some analysis about this. So I wanted to show you what I did. And you don't have to do this. I'm really showing you this more to show you one of the ways that I think is great to know how to use Excel. So what I did is I put together a comparison of my laptop, my Mac laptop, and Wired. So Wired is actually where you have a cable, most likely from your cable modem or your wireless, right? Probably your wireless, because usually people have either a cable modem and a Wi-Fi router, but sometimes you can have them together. So one of the types, most commonly people just do Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi meaning a wireless connection in their house, but they don't think about how much of a speed difference that can be. And I do think about this, and I'll show you why. Is for me, if I'm wired, and by the way, these numbers are megabits per second, megabits per second. That's what these numbers represent. And so we could talk about that, but really what I want to focus on here is that if I'm on my Mac and I'm wired, I get 207 megabits per second. That's fast. That's pretty good internet. But if I'm wireless Wi-Fi on my house, I get 7 or 6. So that means if I compare my wired to my wireless, there's a 97% decrease in my speed. So it's really interesting to know this. And by the way, you can see the formula to choose for decrease. So if you wanted to do, again, not required, it's more that it's good to know these things, right? So if I go and I look at my phone and I look at wireless this time versus my T-Mobile, right? I can see that for my phone, if I'm on my home Wi-Fi, wireless, okay, it's 196. It's close to my speed of my laptop, which makes sense for me because I don't have a really new phone, but I have a fairly new one. And so the antenna that is on my mobile phone is pretty good. Has one of, and that's also dependent on the kind of Wi-Fi router you have. That's, so there's so many different aspects of this, but it is good to do just a beginning analysis. So if I compare my Wi-Fi on my phone versus Wi-Fi on T-Mobile, there's a 90% decrease. So it's like, oh yeah, if I'm home, I really should be on my Wi-Fi. It's much faster, right? But also, what happens if I just step outside of my house? Does my T-Mobile get faster? And the answer is yeah, because I have a cell phone tower for T-Mobile not very far away. But just being in the house, based on the way the house is built, can definitely impact your Wi-Fi or your T-Mobile, your mobile internet speed. So the other thing I did here, and I just showed this, is like, yeah, my ISP is Xfinity, and yes, it's pretty fast, and yes, I pay for the privilege. I've really thought about just actually using my T-Mobile, but as you can see, at least on my phone, and I could actually connect and that'd be the other test, connect my laptop up to my phone, and then what I would do is place my phone in the most advantaged, most high-speed connectivity to T-Mobile, and then check that speed and see if that's really realistic. Now, why it's not is I'm not the only one on my home network. And if we all hit T-Mobile with the bandwidth that they offered, probably wouldn't be usable, wouldn't be suitable for the typical activities that happen around my particular house, and I'm guessing around most of us. Like, we have connected devices, so I have a Google Home, right? I have multiple things. Actually, now my car actually connects to my Wi-Fi. Anyway, you get the idea. Like, this is a great use of Excel, right? This percentage of decrease is a formula, and you can actually see, now I'm using Google Sheets, but if I double click here, it'll actually show you visually what it's doing is it's taking the larger number, which is wireless in this case, minus the T-Mobile, and then dividing by the original number to get the percent of decrease. So, but coming back here, now obviously you don't have to do this, but I want you to know that this is why some of this, we've put this together, and actually this is Brian. Brian wrote this discussion board up. He's done them all. I just go through and offer them up to you. And I really think this is, they've all been important, but I think this one is especially so because it is really good to understand like what you're paying for versus what you're getting is one thing. The other thing is to understand the difference based on the time of day. Notice I only did one test. I'm actually going to do a couple tests throughout the day because I am interested, because these things also change. I think last time I did this was a couple of months ago. The reason I got the wired connection here was I knew this was true. And it's just good to be reminded how true this is, my wired versus my wireless, because most of us choose Wi-Fi because it's convenient, but it's not the fastest. And there's also security, right? If you think about that, we could talk about, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but just FYI, because when you're on Wi-Fi, then you're also dependent on the level of security that is on your Wi-Fi router, which if it's new, it's probably fine. But if it's a little older, then your Wi-Fi might be hackable. And that's probably a term that pulls up emotions for folks. But, or you may not have any secure on it at all. You just have it completely wide open, which you shouldn't. Okay. Because if I had that from my house, anybody could drive by and try to get on my Wi-Fi, which I wouldn't want them to for a lot of different reasons, including I'm responsible for what they do. The speed decreases. So you see the kind of this discussion can lead to a whole other understanding of the world in which we live. Maybe you already have this. So here's my question for you. I've already posed a couple, but did this lead you to ask more questions? Did this answer some of the questions you might have about this topic? Is there something else you would like me to, is there a next step you'd want to have me chat about? Remember that when you're answering this, and I'll leave you with this concept, what I want here is a narrative. I don't want you to just answer 1 through 8 if you're doing the mobile one, or if you're doing the 1 through 6. It's not about just answer, although you want to in your written, your paragraph writing, reply to that. Remember, again, this is college level writing, so make sure you do that. All right, have a wonderful, wonderful week, and I will chat with you soon. Peace out.